In the world of literature, he is known as a giant of the spirit, whose words penetrate the most secret corners of the human soul. His novels are powerful epics, interweaving history and philosophy, love and war, wealth and poverty. He was a man of contradictions, accused of abusive behavior, hostile to emerging feminism, an idealist who sought to renounce material goods and abandon his own heritage in favor of a life of asceticism. Despite his controversial views and complicated relationships with his loved ones, he was able to win the hearts of millions of readers and remains one of the most quoted and sought-after authors for generations. Scandalous, sometimes reviled, but invariably great, this is Leo Tolstoy, one of the most colorful and controversial figures in the history of world literature. Leo Tolstoy was born on August 28, 1828, in the Russian Empire, in his mother's hereditary estate, Yasnaya Polyana. Leo Tolstoy's mother, Marina Tolstaya, belonged to the Volkonsky family, descendants of Rurikovich. Leo Tolstoy is a distant relative of Alexander Pushkin. Pushkin's great-grandmother and Tolstoy's mother's great-grandmother are sisters. Leo was the fourth child in the family. A year and a half later, Tolstoy's mother died of labor fever. After 7 years, suddenly dies, and the father of the future writer, Count Nicholas Tolstoy. As a result of these tragic events, the guardian of the children becomes their aunt, and all the children move to Kazan. Leo Tolstoy followed his older brothers to the Imperial Kazan University. He was enrolled as a student of Oriental literature, where he showed chronic underachievement. In order not to stay for a second year, was forced to transfer to the Faculty of Law, where his problems with his studies continued. Barely, the future classic passed the final exams on an average score of satisfactory and was able to transfer to the second year. At the Faculty of Law, Leo Tolstoy studied for 2 years, then abandoned his studies and plunged into the world of literature. After that, Tolstoy decided to return to his parents' estate in order to engage in farming. But even in this field, he did not succeed, since he was constantly on the move around the cities of Russia. But what he really excelled at was keeping a personal diary. This habit inspired him to write his novels and novellas, and allowed him to form most of his life goals and priorities. An interesting fact is that this nuance of Tolstoy's biography, keeping a diary, was a consequence of imitating the great Benjamin Franklin. Naturally, Leo Tolstoy had a hobby. He was extremely fond of music. His most favorite composers were Bach, Handel, and Chopin. Leo, in the late 1840s, in co-authorship with Zybin, even composed a waltz. This work is the only musical work of Tolstoy. Also, one of the writer's hobbies was sewing boots. He not only made boots for himself, but also gave them to his relatives and friends. It is reliably known that Leo Tolstoy's older brother, Nikolai, had a great influence on him. He was a friend and mentor of the future writer. It was Nicholas who invited his younger brother to join the military service in the Caucasus. During military service in the Caucasus, Leo Tolstoy was twice given the opportunity to receive the George Cross, but both times unsuccessfully. The first time there was a mix-up with the paperwork, and the necessary documents did not arrive in time. The second time, Leo conceded the award to good-natured old soldier Andreev. This act allowed the private to receive a lifetime pension. During the service, Leo had quite a lot of free time. During this period, he wrote an autobiographical novel, Childhood, in which he masterfully described the memories of the first years of life. This work became an important event for the compilation of his biography. As soon as Childhood was published in the magazine Sovremennik, Tolstoy immediately gained popularity as a writer. After that, Leo Tolstoy wrote the next story, Cossacks, in which he describes his army life in the Caucasus. Interesting fact that Tolstoy did not stop his writing activities even during his participation in the Crimean War. During this period, from under his pen comes the story Adolescence, which is a continuation of Childhood, as well as Sevastopol stories. After the end of the Crimean War, Tolstoy leaves the service. Upon his arrival home, he already has great fame in the literary field. His prominent contemporaries talk about a major acquisition for Russian literature in the person of Tolstoy. While still young, Tolstoy was characterized by arrogance and stubbornness, which is clearly visible in his diary entries. He refused to belong to one or another philosophical school, and once publicly called himself an anarchist, after which he decided to go to France in 1857. With high hopes, Leo traveled to Europe, but these trips did not bring him peace of mind. Everything seemed alien to him. The contrast between the rich and the poor especially saddened the writer. Soon he developed an interest in gambling. But it didn't last long. When he lost all his savings, he had to return home from Europe. Despite all the difficulties, he wrote the last third part of his autobiographical trilogy, Youth. It took place in the same 1857. September 23, 1862, in Tolstoy's biography, takes a sharp turn. He marries Sophia, who was the daughter of a doctor. With his wife, Tolstoy was familiar from her infancy and even babysat the future spouse. The writer was bound by a youthful friendship with his future mother-in-law, which was an important criterion for him in the choice of a wife. At the time of marriage, Leo was 34 years old, and Sophia was only 18 years old. From this marriage, 9 sons and 4 daughters were born. 5 children out of 13 died in childhood. Before the wedding, the Count gave the future wife to reread the diaries, in which he described in color his numerous relationships with different women. According to Sophia, she remembered their contents for the rest of her life. Perhaps it was this act of the Count generated in his wife a painful jealousy, which she was tormented by all her life. The attitude of Leo to Sophia constantly changed, from complete indifference to attacks of inexplicable tenderness. After the first night with his wife in Yasnaya Poliana, Leo Tolstoy wrote in his diary only 2 words, "Not her." For a while in Tolstoy's biography comes the brightest period. He is truly happy, and largely due to the practicality of his wife, material wealth, outstanding literary work, and in connection with it all Russian and even world fame. In the person of his wife, Tolstoy found a helper in all matters, practical and literary. His wife copied countless manuscripts of her husband. His handwriting could not make out any editor. In the archives, there are 5,202 sheets, and finely scribbled, with the manuscripts of the novel War and Peace. It should be said that Tolstoy's biography is in many ways unusually contradictory, precisely because of his relationship with his wife, with whom he lived for 48 years. Tolstoy is one of the most prolific writers. His works are massive, not only in scope, but also in the meanings he addresses in them. Tolstoy's most popular works are considered to be War and Peace, AnnaKarenina, and Resurrection. Both critics and the public have long debated about the work War and Peace. The subject of their disputes was the Napoleonic Wars described in the book. Also sharply discussed were the elaborate but still fictional characters. Among all other ideas, Leo Tolstoy tried to convey to the reader that a person's position in society and the meaning of his life are derived from his daily activities. In the work AnnaKarenina, the writer contributed many autobiographical sketches. This is easy to trace, looking at the relationship between Kitty and Leowin, the main characters of the novel. Despite the fact that the above-described works were a colossal success, it did not give the writer any joy. He was in a depressive state and experienced a deep inner desolation. In this regard, the next stage of Tolstoy's biography was a continuous, almost convulsive search for the meaning of life. So, after 15 years of family life, Tolstoy caught fire with the idea that property and money are evil, from which it is necessary to get rid of. The writer planned to give up copyright and live in poverty. At that time, his family was the most numerous. The older children had to enter the university and gymnasium. The younger ones were still infants. Sophia did not support her husband. With this began a series of sharp family conflicts. About her husband, she said, "He preaches love for all mankind, but hates his own children," meaning that he does not care about the welfare of offspring. Tolstoy, tormented by unattainable demands of her husband, female illnesses, the death of her beloved children, and worries about the estate, had hysterical fits now and then. Invited to Yasnaya Polyana in the summer of 1910, Dr. Rosolimo diagnosed Sophia. Degenerative double constitution, paranoid and hysterical, with predominance of the first. At the moment, episodic aggravation. In one of the crisis periods of his life, the Count diagnosed himself with longing and indifference. Depression was not yet known at that time. Doctors advised him to treat with kumis. The method appealed to the writer, and he even bought an estate not far from the Kumis Cure Center. In 1886, when Leo was already 58 years old, he made his first long-distance trek from Moscow to Yasnaya Polyana. The road gave the Count time to think, allowed him to relax from the luxurious life, and gave him the opportunity to communicate with ordinary people. During his life, he walked 3 times from Moscow to Yasnaya Polyana, 200 kilometers. Initially, Leo sought answers to his questions in the Orthodox Church, but it did not bring him any results. Over time, he began to criticize in every possible way both the Orthodox Church itself and the Christian religion in general. His main position was that the Christian doctrine is good, but Jesus Christ is not needed. That is why he decided to make his own translation of the Gospel. In general, Tolstoy's religious views were extremely complex and confusing. It was some incredible mixture of Christianity and Buddhism, flavored with various Eastern beliefs. Tolstoy's teachings had a significant influence on the Indian philosopher Mahatma Gandhi, who was in correspondence with the Russian writer. At the age of 57, Leo Tolstoy became a vegetarian. In 1901, the Holy Governing Synod issued a ruling on Count Leo Tolstoy. This was a ruling that officially notified that Leo Tolstoy was no longer a member of the Orthodox Church, as his publicly expressed beliefs were incompatible with such membership. Because of his new beliefs, Leo Tolstoy wanted to give away all his savings and give up his own property in favor of the poor. However, his wife, Sophia, strongly protested in this regard. In this connection, a major family crisis emerged in Tolstoy's biography. When Sophia learned that her husband had publicly renounced the copyrights to all his works, which in fact was their main source of income, they began to have bitter conflicts. From Tolstoy's diary, "She does not understand, and the children do not understand, spending money, that every ruble lived by them and profited by books. There is suffering my shame. Shame let it be, but for what weakening of that action which could have the preaching of truth." Of course, it is not difficult to understand Leo's wife. After all, they had 9 children, whom he, by and large, left without means of subsistence. Pragmatic, rational, and active Sophia could not allow this to happen. Eventually, Tolstoy made a formal will, transferring the rights to his youngest daughter, Alexandra, who fully sympathized with his views. In 1886, one of Tolstoy's most famous novels, The Death of Ivan Ilyich, appears. Its main character realizes that he has wasted most of his life, and the realization came too late. In 1898, Leo wrote an equally famous work, Father Sergius. In it, he criticized his own beliefs, which appeared to him after his spiritual rebirth. The rest of the works are devoted to the theme of art. They include the play The Living Corpse, 1890, and the brilliant novella Kadzi Murat, 1904. In 1903, Tolstoy wrote a short story called After the Ball. It was published only in 1911, after the writer's death. In the last years of his biography, Leo Tolstoy was better known as a religious leader and moral authority. His thoughts were focused on resisting evil through a non-violent method. Even during his lifetime, Tolstoy became an idol for most Russian people. However, despite all his achievements, there were serious flaws in his family life, which were especially aggravated by old age. Leo believed that a woman, no matter what business she was engaged in, teaching, medicine, art, she has one goal: sexual love. The writer was especially categorical against the freedoms of so-called scholarly women. There is no need to invent an outcome for women who have gotten fat and have not found a husband. On these women without offices, chairs, and telegraphs, there is and has always been a demand exceeding the supply. Baby mamas, nannies, housekeepers, promiscuous women, Tolstoy reasoned. The writer's wife, Sophia, a well-read and educated woman, was outraged by such cynical thoughts. It should be noted that Sophia Tolstaya, for almost 50 years, was engaged in the fact that rewrote countless manuscripts of her husband, whose handwriting could not make out any publishing house. The wife of the writer, Sophia, did not agree with the views of her husband and disliked some of his followers, who often came to Yasnaya Polyana. She used to say, "How can you love humanity and hate those who are close to you?" All this could not go on for long. On November 10, 1910, Leo Tolstoy secretly leaves Yasnaya Polyana, actually running away. Accompanied by his doctor, Tolstoy sets off on his final journey, which he was not destined to finish. On November 20, 1910, at the 83rd year of life, Leo Tolstoy died of pneumonia. Leo Tolstoy has left an indelible mark on literature. His works have been translated into many languages and continue to inspire readers around the world. His contribution to Russian and world culture is inestimable. Tolstoy's work not only fascinates with the depth of psychology and philosophical insight, but also evokes a lively response with its relevance and humanistic orientation. The novels War and Peace and AnnaKarenina are considered the pinnacle of classical literature and are required reading in many educational institutions around the world. Tolstoy was not only a writer, but also a thinker whose ideas on nonviolence and free will influenced figures such as Mahatma Gandhi and Martin Luther King. To this day, more than a century after his death, Tolstoy remains one of the most quoted authors. His ideas and works continue to be explored, adapted into film and theater, and discussed in academic circles. Tolstoy lived a life full of passions and contradictions, which is reflected in his works and makes his figure even more appealing to modern readers. On the road to spiritual redemption, he left behind a literary legacy that to this day is a guideline for those who seek truth and beauty in words. His philosophy and views on society, morality, and religion continue to provoke discussion and debate, making him still relevant even centuries after his death. Thus, Leo Tolstoy's legacy remains not just a prominent part of literary history, but a living, breathing example of great literature capable of changing the world.